is this man. It is Clayton Echard. Clayton, how you doing?
Hey, Steve, how you doing? I'm doing great. Back home with the family in Missouri. It's nice and calm here.
Yeah, I was going to say, finally some calm in your life after the craziness it's been the last 13 months. I guess my first question.
I was going to say, let's hope it's not the quiet before the storm.
Yeah.
That's the one thing.
It's just, there's so much to get to with you. So we'll just kind of, I'm trying to take it in like eras here of, hey, part about the case and then part about your time on The Bachelor and then the mental health aspect of it. But just kind of right now where you're at. God, how are you right now? Now that the judge has decided and given her decision after 13 months of going through just bullshit, basically, where are you at right now?
I'm also in a really great spot. I just had this conversation with my family last night. Getting that ruling just was like the last weight that was lifted off of me. And I was working all through this, but it weighed on me naturally. I mean, it was just, there was stressors from work, there was stressors from this situation. And so I was past my threshold, or operating maybe right at my threshold of what I could tolerate. So with all this now going in my favor, I just feel like I have a renewed sense of energy. I feel more confident, resilient. And so I'm feeling that now. I'm waking up. I'm like, I can do this. If I've went through it, all of this, what can I go through? So I do feel like it's just built me up. And yeah, it's just one less thing I have to worry about. So I'm in a great spot.
I know you said, obviously, you've been working through all of this, but there were a lot of times during this last 13 months where I know you've lost out on opportunities, whether it was in the real estate industry or something else. Can you talk about how your work was affected and the opportunities that you did lose? Like specific examples of things that you lost, money that you may have lost out on?
Yeah, I lost a couple brand deals where I had them in writing where they said, listen, in light of the allegations, we're going to forego this partnership. And so that was more than a few $1,000s there. I lost out on, I had to stop my speaking because I had a few people respond back. Most people just never responded, but a few said, hey, listen, in light of what's going on, we can't bring him into the schools to speak because the parents, even if it's not true, they're going to ask, why are we bringing in a guy that's currently facing an allegation? So that I completely pivoted and just cut out my speaking engagements because all of the schools were going to Google me right away. Like, let's see who this guy is. And then the real estate, it's hard because there's a lot of opportunities I probably lost that I just can't account for. I would, I do a lot of cold calling and I would, have people that were interested and say, yeah, I'd like to work with you. Send me over your information. And I would just be very, anxious at that point because I'd send over my info and I'm like, they're going to naturally Google me because they're going to see if I have good reviews as a realtor, what I've done. And I'm like, those type in Clayton Echard and it's just going to boom, pop up. And it's going to be, Clayton Echard accused of impregnating this woman, blah, blah, blah. So, it was really hard, even if I didn't lose opportunities because of this, anything that just went dead, radio silence, I assumed had something to do with this.
When this story first broke in September, when the article came out in The Sun, you and I spoke, I think probably either the next day or 2 days after. And we had spent a good 90 minutes or so on the phone. And, I just asked you flat out, like, what's going on here? Because when you read the story, when it first came out on The Sun, there's parts of it that are like, okay, it's very possible. And then there's parts of it you're like, wait, something isn't adding up here. It's a little bit too much. It's way too detailed. And did he really say these things in text messages and stuff like that? So obviously I just went straight to you. I went straight to the source. And, I think the one thing and the reason why I've always believed you in this is because your story has never changed from the very get-go. Like 2 days after, you're like, Steve, I never had sex with this woman, period. End of story. And it's like, it's just crazy what she's been through. And this is still, we're talking September. I mean, there's so much stuff still to come that we had no idea about. But in September when we spoke, and one theme that I think a lot of people even forget, and I hate to remind you of this story, but in April of 2022, a girl named Sasha on TikTok says, hey, and this is when you were with Susie still. Yep. Hey, I had sex with Clayton last night in New York. And you had to deal with this whole thing over, it only lasted a couple days because it was proven that she just, I don't know what her deal was, but she clearly didn't have sex with you. You were in Arizona at the time. You proved you were. And now that I think about it more, I think I know your answer, but I want to hear it from you. Do you think this story that made the news, made the entertainment sites out there, do you think this played a role in Laura targeting you? Do you think she absolutely knew about this story and is like, this is a guy I might be able to trick or play this on?
That's a good question. I think that I'm not sure. I couldn't tell you what my intuition is saying and whether or not I know she targeted me. Do I think that she targeted me because she saw that I was an easy target and I had a previous accusation and I wasn't a well-liked bachelor. So did she weigh this all into account and say, there's a good chance that I'm going to be able to get the public opinion to sway in my favor? I don't want to give her that much credit. I don't think she was that smart. But I do believe that she probably saw my time on the show. She saw how open I was about my mental health struggles, how I'm a people pleaser, and likely saw it as this guy, is so focused on his public persona, and he's easily manipulated that I can likely take him to a place where I'm going to be able to fully control this man. And that's what she tried to do. So I do think sometimes like being vulnerable and open and saying, here's my weaknesses, you're basically giving aggressors the formula to beat you. You're like, hey, this is what I struggle with. And so they go right at that. And so that's why she kept threatening, I'm going to go public and I'm going to show people how terrible you are. And I was like, just admit you lied and drop this and I'll move on. I'm not trying to make this a spectacle, but that was her big piece that she was like, once I launch this, it's going to destroy him, because she knew that I was a people pleaser, likely from all the interviews I've done, and said how much. And so she thought that would destroy me. So I definitely think that she factored that in and said, this is somebody I can probably control.
And for those that don't remember, the Sasha story from 2022, this TikTok girl, this isn't even a situation that you were a part of. It's not like, oh, she's accusing me of something that I never did. You never even saw this woman. You weren't even in the same state. Somehow, some way, this woman was tricked into thinking that she had sex with Clayton Echard and on a given night in April of 2022 when she never did. So This wasn't something that you put yourself in a situation, because some people are like, gosh, this guy just keeps putting himself in situations. No, you didn't do anything with the Sasha.
No, and I would even go on that one. My intuition tells me, she targeted me because she knew, I believe fully that she was prepping for this, and knew that Susie was in LA filming a wedding and I had not posted on my socials the night before. So I think full well she was probably waiting on a moment where we were going to be separated and I hadn't posted on my social. So there was no track record of where I was. And she definitely didn't account for the fact that I was going to pull out location services on my phone, which, thankfully I saw in an article like 4 years ago before that, where I just saw that as your phone's tracking you nonstop. And so it popped in my head. I went to my phone and I'm like, there it is. And that was, what basically exonerated me. But she wasn't anticipating that, but I definitely think that she was like, I'm going to go ahead and make this accusation now, because he didn't post and show anyone where he was at the previous day. I'm gonna be able to get away with this. So I definitely think that was a very targeted attack on me as well. Just thankfully I had a little trick up my sleeve.
Yeah. It was a wild 48 hours because you, again, had to prove something that didn't happen. And it's almost like, how do you prove something that didn't happen? And you actually could by showing your location. And like you said, I don't think she ever thought in a million years that you were going to be able to pull your location services up. But so when we talk about the Laura case, just overall, I know that whether people are invested, like the Justice for Clayton crew just knows every detail about it. And then there are people on the periphery that, maybe watch Dave's videos and maybe have heard me talk about it, but didn't follow along daily for the last 9 months, 10 months, but have an idea. And, people are, one of the questions that I got asked me a lot was like, how could this case last so long? Like, a woman claims she's pregnant. Clayton says, I never had sex with her. How in the world did this drag on for a year? What's like the summary you can give of that? The short answer of how this took a year to prove that somebody was pregnant or not?
Because this was a woman that has done this before, that knew how to drag out a case by avoiding doing the things that would basically put this to rest quickly, which is provide proof of pregnancy. She did everything in her power to avoid that, and she took the initial. I call it an HCG test because that's what it is at this point. I mean, it's known as a pregnancy test for most people, but not her. So she takes the initial test and she thinks this is enough to get him, to convince him that I am pregnant. And of course, when I first saw it, I'm like, well, I said this. I'm either dealing with the craziest woman I've ever met in my life, or this person's telling the truth. That's where I was at, and I gave her the benefit of the doubt because I thought there's no way that I'm dealing with someone that's this mentally insane. And then I found out I was, but I really gave her every chance to be like, well, maybe she's telling the truth. I mean, I still think she might have tried to trap me somehow. But like, I think she's being honest. And so I questioned it because my mind could not wrap around the fact that someone could go to this level. But then what happened is she thought, oh, well, here's the tests here. I'll take, she said she took 11 tests, and that even rubbed me the wrong way. I thought, why would you take 11 tests? It's almost like you're trying to continue to make sure that you are still popping positive for HCG. So I thought that was odd. I'm like, after about 2 or 3 tests, wouldn't you stop? Because it's like, I'm pretty sure I'm pregnant. So she did some things that just were fishy. And then she said, of course, right away, well, we got to wait 9 weeks for an ultrasound. So I said, okay, that makes sense. So stop talking to me until then. Well, she wouldn't stop. And then 9 weeks later, I'm like, all right, you going to schedule it? And then she said, oh, I'm fearful for my life that you're going to come and hurt me. So I'm going to not let you know when I take the test. So she then went off the grid, and she claimed she took it. I said, well, then send me the ultrasound. And she was like, let's meet up in person. And I said, no, I'm not meeting with you in person. So she's like, well, then I'm not going to send it to you. And then she said, oh, I'll show you it if you date me for a week. So it kept, the dating stipulation was wrapped into everything. It was like, date me for a week or I'm going to have this kid. Then it was date me for a week and I'll show you the ultrasound. Then it was date me for a week and then I'll take the paternity test. So she kept wrapping that up. And I said, I'll take the paternity test. Like, I want to take it because I was the first one to bring it up. I'm like, let's do this. And then magically we went from 1 kid to twins. And she's like, oh, well, they can't do it whenever there's twins involved. So I called every single lab center possible. And I found Ravgen. And they're like, yeah, we'll do it. And no problem at all. And so I'm like, hey, I found somebody. And she responded back like, oh, great. So I can't wait to take it. I said, all right, perfect. So I'm going to schedule it for this date. She's like, I'm only going to do it, though, if you date me for a week, because honestly, I know I'm pregnant with your kid. I don't have to prove anything. So if you're not going to date me, then we'll just wait until the due date and you'll find out then. So she just kept throwing the dating card out there. And I'm like, I can't get past this. We went to she scheduled a mediation with the court. Same thing. The mediator said, what are you guys going to do to solve this? I said, I want her medical records. She's like, I'll do it if he dates me. I'm like, well, stop putting that on there. And I was like, can you just show me? And so finally we got to a point where we said, she said, I'm not showing my medical records because I don't want you to see all the other stuff that's in there. It's not pertaining to pregnancy. And I said, okay, then how about we do a paternity test? And she said, sure, I'll schedule one. And the mediator's like, all right, you're going to schedule it? I said, she's not going to. I'm telling you right now. We get off the phone or, off the mediation. And she's like, yeah, I'm only going to do this if you date me. So she just threw it back out there again. And then she said, I'm going public. And then when she went public, that was her, she comes out trying to control the narrative and says, I've been trying to get this guy to take a test. He won't do it. And I'm like, no. I've been calling for this for months. So she's, as everyone saw, is manipulative. And she tried to, control the narrative by coming out saying, I've been trying to get this man to take this test. And that's why I went to social media. I said, all right, here we go. Like, it's out there. So I went straight to my stories. I said, hey, look, here you go. Proof that I scheduled this. Now she has to schedule hers. She did schedule one before that point, and then she canceled my portion. And so I never found out who canceled it specifically. I know it was her, someone related to her, but she goes, all right, I'm going to schedule it. And I said, perfect. And so she scheduled it. I scheduled my part. And then I called the day before to confirm. And as I'm calling, I get an email from her. And she's like, I saw you canceled. And I'm on the phone with them. And I'm like, oh, no. I know. So I call them and I go, hey, I want to confirm that my test is tomorrow. They said, no, you canceled it. I said, I did not cancel it. And they go, well, yeah, no, it was canceled. Somebody called in on your behalf from a clinic it was like in the LA area. And I said, I didn't call. I said, who called? And they go, and so they gave me a transcript, and like they gave me the name or not the name, like somebody that called in. So I have the name of the person that like called in on my behalf. It was someone from a clinic, and they said that person apparently got a call from somebody else, but they didn't know who it was. But they said, yeah, I'm canceling on his behalf. So she tried to get me on that. So that's why I called right away, and then I got Ravgen to schedule it on my behalf. So she was already setting that up, and then she goes out public and says he just canceled, and that's why I was like, no, I'm scheduling this on my account now because you canceled this on me. So she was again like setting it all up, and I realized I had to play 4-dimensional chess with her. I was like, I have to be 2 steps ahead of her because she's game planning to make me look like I'm the one that's being dodgy.
And it's one of the things that I've brought up a lot when I've talked about this case is, people can say, oh, she's crazy and she's doing all this stuff. But the constant, this is a woman that after your hookup the night of May 20th, you told in a car, sitting with her in a car the very next day, like, hey, I crossed the professional line there. Shouldn't have happened. I don't think there's any future between us. This was one day, May 21st, right? The very next day.
Yep.
And then it's just like, why? And I've said this from the beginning. Why couldn't her answer have been, some guy, got a blowjob from me and now wants to dump me. That sucks. And just move on with your life. Like it happens. Guys ghost girls all the time. Yeah. And you didn't even technically ghost her. You told her to her face, like, look, I shouldn't have crossed that line. This is what, I know it happened last night. But I don't think there's any sort of future between us. And then here you are dealing with it 13 months later. It's baffling to me that this woman has obviously some sort of issue with men saying no to her, because you said it the next day and never made it any more clear than, hey, it's just not going to happen between us. It's fine. 2 people hook up and they don't have to date. I don't want to date you. I'm not interested. And then she just took it to this level.
Yeah. So the thing is, and this is what's scary, is she was normal until she wasn't. There was no signs whatsoever. The night that she was over at my place, she was a normal woman. I did not pick up on any signs that she had any type of screw loose. And then the next day when I told her I had made a mistake, she starts crying. And that was like my first little yellow flag. I'm like, whoa, like I just met you. Why are you bawling your eyes out and saying like, please give me a chance? And I said, no, I'm sorry. Like I made a mistake. I'll pass you over to another realtor, a coworker of mine. They'll get this done. I don't want the commission on this. Like, I'm sorry. I made the mistake and I'm willing to forego that. Like, let's just go ahead and, and move beyond this. And she was like, no, please. I only want to work with you and give me a chance, please. And I finally started to get agitated because I told her no about 7-8 times at that point. So I finally said, Laura, no is no. Stop asking me to date you. Like this is that it's over. I made a mistake. I'm taking accountability, but stop asking me. You're being disrespectful to how I feel and my decision. And I will never forget the look she gave me. It was the darkest, just her face glossed over. And she went from crying to just straight face. And she looked at me and she goes, oh, okay, I totally get it. She said, you have a good rest of your day. Got out of the car. And I remember I had chills. I had goosebumps. I was like, I don't know what that was, but that felt demonic. Like it was it just washed over her. She would just completely went stone faced. And I just knew, she walked out of my car and I'm like, I don't know what that was, but like, that's not the end of it. Whatever the hell that just was. And I did not think it was going to be what it was, but that was the first moment where I'm like, whoa. I'm dealing with somebody dangerous. Yeah.
Yeah. And then like you said, that was in May of 2023. You finally got a judgment decision on June 18th of 2024. 13 months of this stuff that you basically had to deal with. And so, like I said, we're not going to go over all the details of the case. I think a lot of people know them, but the basics of it were that, like, she just kept continuing with these lies and, hey, I'm going to take this and do this. And for the longest time, basically from May, since the night of the hookup until October, and your first hearing that ended up being on Zoom, you were repping yourself. And when you did that, maybe you just didn't think about it. When you did that and you were repping yourself and you had that Zoom case and it happens, it's over and done with, and you find out you didn't even, that's the funny part, you didn't even know you guys were on Zoom that day. Dave was the one that texted you right after you got out of the court, and he said, hey, good job, man. You're like, what are you talking about? You're like, we just watched. We all watched it. I sat there and watched it, and I'm like, he doesn't have any representation. And that's where, Dave raised the GoFundMe for you. But when you went to that case, did you think it was over then?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I did. I mean, so I just bought a house, and I was at a place where I'm like, I'm not hiring a lawyer. I knew the rates, and I'm like, I'm going to blow $5,000 a week. Like there's no way. I don't have the money for it. I just spent everything I had. So I'm like sitting here, I'm thinking, I go, well, you're the one who's innocent. It's really simple. You're going to go into this case. I'm going to get my injunction against harassment against her to stop her from talking to me, and that'll be it. And then her order of protection that she filed in response, I was like, I'll get that removed because she can't prove that I harassed her. And so I'll have that removed, and that'll be it. Once I cut her out, she'll just give up. That's what I thought. I was like, if she can't harass me, she'll just stop, because that's her whole way of going about this, is she just inundates men with just message after message after message. So I genuinely thought that she would just lose interest if I got that injunction. And, that I walked out of the case, as you said, and Dave sent that text, and I'm like, you're kidding. But it ended up working out in my favor because, then everyone saw me, and I had a previous conversation at that point with a couple lawyers, and they said, here's my rates. I said, listen, I'm not saying you're not worth it. I just can't afford that right now based off of where I'm at financially. So, but once the case aired out there, everyone's like, what is he doing? And that was when I think, Woodnick saw it and was like, this guy has no idea still what he's up against. So, I have to step in and talk with him and get him to understand it's important that he's going to lose off of medical jargon, or sorry, not medical jargon, off of legal jargon. He's going to lose off procedures. It's not a matter of right or wrong. If you don't know the procedures, you'll lose, even if you're right. So he, talked to me and talked some sense into me, and that's when I got representation.
I mean, during all this, and you like you said, you're a big mental health advocate. You had to put it on the back burner through all this. You were losing gigs because of it. During all this, was there a time or a story that came out or something that she did that was just like you hit your lowest point? Do you remember at what point between May of 2023 and June where there was an absolute low point to this?
I guess it would just have to be, when she came out initially. She came out on that date because she knew it was the first day that I was filming for this local reality pickleball TV show. So it was my first hosting gig. And, I was already nervous because I hadn't hosted before, but it was still exciting. And so she knew that was the first day. Because I think I had mentioned it to it in an email or something. So she launches that, and it's getting blown up online, and the producers and the owners of the pickleball kingdom, they're all going around. Cameras are, just they're filming, and I'm sitting there and my phone's blowing up. I'm like, I have to tell them right now. They're going to likely fire me on the spot because it's day one, and they're going to find a new host. And so my phone's blown up. People are DMing me. We knew this. He sucks. He always has sucked. This tracks. And that was my lowest moment. And thankfully, they gave me just enough support. I grabbed the owner. I said, I need to talk with you. He's like, okay, is this serious? I go, it's very serious. Grab everybody. And so I pull them in a room. I tell them what's going on. They said, okay, can you please step out? We need to talk about this. So I step out, and I remember I'm sitting there. I'm like, this is it. They're going to fire me. I am not going to have any speaking gigs. All of my employment opportunities are gone. I'm down to my final dollars. I spent everything on this house, and it's getting renovated right now. So it's either going to succeed or fail. I'm like, but I have to find a new source of income. I don't know where this is going to go. And so I was just feeling super overwhelmed. And thankfully they pulled me back in after 5 minutes. They said, you promise that you're telling the truth? I said, absolutely. They said, okay, we're going to stick with you. That gave me just enough. And then the pickleball players, they all banded around me and were like, we believe you. And they were like my family and support in that moment. If I didn't have that, I was at my lowest of low points, because the following days, it was just all these news sources were just piling on, and they're involved in a scandal. And it was basically guilty till proven innocent. That was the lowest point of it all by far. And at the time I didn't have any, I was going at it alone. But thankfully that my lowest point only lasted maybe a day or two, because then I got a message from, from somebody saying you're not the only one. And that gave me a glimmer of hope that I'm like, wait, so there's somebody else. I'm not alone. And then we found out with the previous victims.
Yeah, you had released a couple things here and there on social media, but was it tough not being able to say much about this case while it was going on? I know that you were probably biting your lip a lot and things were getting out, and obviously Dave was covering it a lot. I was covering it when I can because I was involved with her. Dave was involved with her because she was emailing us. She was trying to get her story across to us, but just this bizarre of, well, if you're not going to listen to me, then I don't want to come on your podcast. It's like, no, you just want us to tell your narrative and you want us to say that Clayton is wrong. And it's like, that's just not the way it works. I'll present both sides, but that's how she works. And if you don't believe her, then that means you're against her and she's, possibly coming after you. So it was just this weird thing, but I know that you were biting your lip during a lot of that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I wanted to say so much more, but I had to be so careful because of that BS protective order she has against me. That's not rooted in any fact whatsoever. But it was weird the way that like the judge went about ruling on it. He said, you can't use your social media to harass her. And I'm like, what? Nothing about in person. She even said like, well, I still want to be able to see him in person. I'm like, what is going on here? Like, how are you enforcing some type of protective order, but not for in person, just online? Like, I was blown away by the ruling, and I was like not in favor of it all, obviously. And I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. And the whole thing was based off of a photo that she claims only I had access to, but she put it on her Dropbox. And so I was blown away. I mean, I think the court hearing, the video finally has gotten out there. And I said, Your Honor, give me 24 hours to come back and I'll prove to you she's lying right now. Like, she sent this to multiple people. And he said, no, my decision's final. And I was just like flabbergasted. I'm like, what the hell? How am I losing this case? Like, and here now you can't go on your social media and harass her. I'm like, well, what does that even mean? That's so like open-ended. So I was very, very cautious about, okay, I can't use my social media to speak on this whatsoever, because she's going to just claim it's harassment no matter what I say. But then, so I was treading lightly, but then I realized, wait, she's trying to silence my largest avenue. So then I became, I got a little bit more ballsy over time. And then I got to the point where I just became so angry. And I was like, you know what, actually, I'm going to test this. Like, go ahead. Like, I dare, like, if the police show up and try to put me in cuffs for her, like, this is going to be a bigger stink than you realize. Like, because then I'm going to fight this thing tooth and nail and be like, this is based on lies, this whole thing. So if I get grabbed by the police and carried away in cuffs, I'm like, this is only going to backfire when they're going to try to say like you violated this. So I'm going to say, on what grounds? Like, show me the evidence. So I kind of got to this point where I'm like, no, wait, this is all based in a lie. So this protective order to me doesn't even exist. I don't really consider it valid whatsoever. I just don't. That's the way I see it now. But I also have found that I'm like, I have freedom of speech, and I'm not harassing her whatsoever by speaking the truth. And she's a public figure by all definitions. She has a podcast. She, wants to be known until all of a sudden she doesn't, until her name gets out there, and then she wants to quiet everything. So I'm like, you put my name out there and you put your own name out there. I didn't put your name out there. It was you put your name out there by leaking this out to everybody. And they went to the court hearings and they found your name. I'm like, I haven't done anything to harass you. I haven't told anybody to harass you. I've told everyone, hey, don't go after her. Like, but I'm like, you should be held accountable. So that's why I've been speaking openly about it now and saying her name. I'm like, your name's already been out there. This isn't me harassing you. I'm just trying to hold you accountable.
I'm sure you've been on dates since May 20th of last year. How do you navigate your dating life now going forward? Would you prefer to date somebody who already knows about all this, or do you mind having to sit down and explain it? Like, hey, if you don't know about this, here it is. Like, I don't know. Is there something that you'd rather do? Would you rather somebody who's already like, no, trust me, I've already read up on you.
Yeah.
I know you're innocent in all this. How's it been navigating the dating life?
Well, I mean, that really just was time specific. So early on, I actually, right after I interacted with Laura that one night, I met somebody and I really liked her. And we started talking, and we were talking for about a month. And, at that point I was withholding intimacy. I didn't want to I'm like, you know what? I made a mistake being intimate. Like, let me withhold this and really get to know this person. And if we get to that place where we finally go to that next level, I'm going to have this conversation, because this is what, a month into the whole Laura fiasco. And I'm like, I need to, like, I can't like not tell this individual if we're gonna go and make this more serious, I need to finally, say something. So after a few dates, I realized like this is getting serious. And so I told her, hey, I need to tell you something. And I told her the whole situation, and she basically said, I really respect you for letting me know, but I can't stick around to find out. So, or to find out or whether or not it's true, or I just can't be a part of this. Like, this is asking a lot out of something. If we're going to start being serious and date, like, this is a lot of baggage. And I'm like, no, I totally understand. So that fell off, and that just like, went by the wayside. But now, I mean, now that I've been, exonerated, now that, I've won the case, and there was a finding of non-paternity, and she's getting referred to the county attorney and to be investigated potentially. Like, now that is happening, I mean, I would prefer a woman not know what my past is. And I just mean more so from The Bachelor. I get hesitant when somebody knows what my past is, because I'm like, are you really talking to me because you like me, or do you like what I've done? So that's where I try to withhold it. I don't tell people what I am. You go on my social media. I mean, I don't really, oftentimes when girls say, hey, what's your Instagram? I'm like, I'll just give you my number. Because I do try to skirt around. Like, I don't want you going on my social media, because they're going to be like, why do you have so many followers? Okay, well, just start scrolling down. You're going to figure it out pretty quickly. I don't have all those followers because of my dance moves. And they'll watch one dance video and they're like, it's certainly not because of that. So I try to hide it, just so I can just feel comfortable. Like, this woman's not here because of what I've done, not here for the fame or because of the attachment to it. This person's here for me. And then when it comes out naturally, they're like, why didn't you tell me? And it's just a simple, because I just want to make sure that you're here because you like me for me.
Yeah. Did you lose people close to you, friends? Did they kind of separate themselves from you, thinking you were too toxic during all this? I mean, obviously that first girl that you dated said, hey, I'm out. Don't want to be a part of it. Were there any other people in your life that kind of said, oh, gosh, I can't associate myself with Clayton right now?
No, there were people that were being quiet, but they had to be quiet because they're high profile individuals. And they sent me support in privacy. I had a lot of support from people that texted me, messaged me, and just said, hey, I really feel for you. They didn't make public statements, but I didn't really care. I'm like, I don't need the public support. I want you all to obviously believe me. And I hope I don't lose friendships over this, but I got a lot of support privately. And here's the thing, like, I saw this online and people said Bachelor Nation didn't come to my defense. And I kind of want to come to their defense for a second, because I ostracized myself from Bachelor Nation. Like, I had a bad taste in my mouth when I came off the show, and I just got so far away from it. And I attributed all the people that went on the show to like the negative experience that I faced. And so I just, like, I went far away. I had people reaching out from time to time. Hey, would love to, meet up, collab, whatever. And I just wasn't answering them. And so I don't know this for a fact, but I think that a lot of Bachelor Nation like thought this guy either thinks he's too good for us, or he just like doesn't want anything to do with us. So why would they come to my defense? I ostracized myself. I went away from it all and chose to not, go to those meetups and not be present there and not interact on their socials. And so I'm not surprised they didn't, speak up for me. And here's the thing, I don't think I'm better than any of them. And I found out that it was like, Clayton, you can't attribute your experience on the show and all these people to being superficial. Like, there's really great people that go on the show, that are really kind-hearted, that are driven individuals, that are awesome people to like, that you can grow with. And I just clumped everybody in to like, you're all fake and superficial at first. Like, that was wrong on my part, because I had such a bad taste in my experience that I played the victim when I came off the show. I was like, man, I got torn to shreds, and this isn't fair the way they edited me. And, I didn't take any accountability really at first. I was like, this is BS. The show painted me as this, villain bachelor, and all these people set me up and, for failure. And so screw all of them. I think that's why nobody came to my defense, because they're like, well, this guy doesn't really want anything to do with us. So why would we support him?
I think in the early going, pretty shortly after the Sun article came out, I think Susie went on a podcast, and she was one of the few that had come out publicly and defended you and just said, look, I know his character. I just, not knowing every detail. She said, I have spoken to Clayton, and she, came to your defense. And, obviously Susie's moved on. She's with Justin now. I don't know if you have any sort of, do you keep in touch with Susie at all? Do you ever, nothing?
No. I mean, and I was so grateful. Like when she came out, I saw that she said, listen, Clayton might be a lot of things, but he's not a liar.
Yeah.
And that meant a lot to me, because she didn't have to say anything, but like, that's somebody that I got to know on a personal level, pretty deeply. And she didn't have to, but she was like, listen, like, I know that my voice is going to, get people to understand, like, or come around. And so she decided to put herself out there, potentially in the line of fire. And I'm just really grateful that, she, like, I wouldn't say we're friends at this point. We don't keep in contact. I mean, and Justin's cool. I've had conversations with Justin. Like there's not like this weird, awkward, tension between us. I mean, like I'm really happy for them. Like they seem to be way more compatible than like what Susie and I were. They feel like a natural fit. They're very creative. They're, if she's a videographer, he's a photographer. I mean, they seem to mesh really well. And so I'm happy. And I again, like I've talked to Justin a few times on social media. He's cool. I think I met him in person. I don't know why I'm blanking right now. My brain but I'm pretty sure we've hung out a couple times. Super cool guy. And so, but it's just, there's just no reason for me to be interacting with her. For what reason? Right. I mean, it's just a matter of like, you're dating him. And if I saw them out or something, yeah, we'd hang out. We'd all have a good time and there would be no animosity. But there's just no reason to talk to her.
I know she did an interview after the breakup between you two, and she said some things, and obviously this is the first time I've ever spoken to you about Susie, about your season. I was just curious. She said some pretty made some blanket statements of, I think along the lines of, and if I'm wrong here, correct me, but she said, I don't even know why Clayton picked me in the first place. And she made it a point to say that you weren't even her type. Did that, I mean, especially after the breakup, and I'm sure obviously breakups are all hard, especially a public breakup coming from this show. When she said stuff like that in an interview, did it kind of be like, you didn't need to say that? Did it bother you a little bit? Or you were like, no, she's right. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it did bother me. There were a few things she said that I was just like, why bring this up? But you know what? I mean, relationships are complex. There is a lot of our relationship that people will never know about. They don't need to know about it. We had the option to basically, when we broke up, to either decide to point fingers at who was the problem, or we could just decide to say, let's just keep this mutual. And let's just say that we both had an equal part in this. And I think we tried really hard to do that. Were there a few points where I was like, come on, Suze, like, you're not making this equal. You're starting to make this seem like I was the problem. I certainly felt that a few times. And I'm like, I'm not over here attacking and saying anything that you've done that I didn't like. But ultimately we kept it cordial. And I was like, I get it. It's emotional. A breakup's hard. And sometimes you say something, and I really don't think she meant ill will. And I'm like, she did help me out so much and with growth in my life. And she pulled me through a really hard time. And so I'm like, you know what, maybe I don't like everything that she's said since, but she did help me out. So I'm just going to focus on the positive of the relationship. I'll let her, she can say a few things, and I'm not going to fire back off at her, because I don't want to be the couple that's like taking subtle shots at each other that become no longer subtle. And then it's like a toxic relationship. I'm like, let me remember her for the good, the things that she helped me get through, and I'll just bite my tongue. Like, certainly there were things she did in our relationship that I was not a fan of, but what's the point of me going out in public and saying, here's some things she did that I didn't like? For what do I win? So people go, oh, well, maybe she's not as great as we thought. Okay. And then what? Like, what do I win? What do I get out of that? Nothing. So, she said it, but the thing she said, I'm like, I get it. It was a emotionally charged time, relationship. And certainly there's things you don't like that I did, and vice versa, but like, whatever, let's just try to get past this, and let's just be cordial, and let's just be, supportive of each other, supportive exes. And I think overall we've accomplished that.
Yeah. It just seemed like it was out of left field for her to say that, because it was like so far, I can't remember how long after the breakup it was, but to hear her say like, I don't know why he didn't pick Gabby or Rachel. They're better matches for him. It was just, like I said, it was kind of out of left field. I didn't see it coming. And like I said, you and I have never spoken about your season. It's obviously a season, like you said, where you were not painted in the greatest of light. And, it almost started from the very beginning. And, I don't know how much of a fan you were of the show and going in, but for a guy who finished, I believe, 9th place on Michelle's season, I think it was 9th, right? Was he 9th? Were you aware that just the idea of you being the Bachelor and your Bachelor season, I had to go back and look at, I had it in my head, but I wanted to make sure I got it right. Michelle's season started airing on October 19th. You were basically almost at hometowns of filming your season before anybody ever saw you on camera. And this was like, the show had never done this before. Everybody assumed, because this was coming fresh off of, I think, Katie's season, because then we went into Michelle's. Everybody assumed our Bachelor was going to be somebody from Katie's season, Greg Grippo or possibly Michael Aleo, something like that. And then we start hearing these rumblings about a guy that's on Michelle's season is going to be the Bachelor. And then some pictures get out of you shooting your intro video in Missouri. And it clearly is going to be this Clayton guy who we know nothing about. And it's never happened before. Our Bachelor's always been from the season before. We've watched their journey. We've seen them in hometown dates. We've usually seen them getting, very far, even final 2, final 3. We have a journey with them. And then once they get dumped, it's like, okay, we can get behind this guy.
Yeah.
I felt like we were behind the 8. You must have felt like I'm behind the 8 ball from the very get-go. And the first time they announce you as the Bachelorette, you have to be up there on stage reading all this negative shit that people were writing about you on the internet. Like, were you aware that you were behind the 8 ball from the start?
I wasn't aware in that moment because I was so oblivious to the show and how it all went. I mean, I grew up, my mom watched it every year. So I saw it in the background when I was walking around my house, had a few girlfriends that watched it. So I had seen maybe a handful of episodes. But when I became the Bachelor, I mean, I didn't know, like, it was all new to me. Everything was new to me. And, I know why I was disliked. I mean, because what you said, no one knew who I was. I basically was forced down everyone's throats, in Michelle's season on like the last episode before I get sent home. And then all of a sudden it's like, here's your Bachelor. And everyone's like, well, this guy was already chosen without us even getting to know who he is. And we never saw him on Michelle's season. And, it was a really tough dynamic because, listen, I gathered all the reason why I was disliked was because I was chosen over 6 men of color. I think that was a major part of it. Everyone's like, why this guy was chosen at number 9. Why did you skip over these 6 other men? And it's like, oh, because you want the stereotypical white dude. And so I was already, behind the 8 ball on that, which I understood. I was like, why did you choose me over these other men? Like, these guys are great guys. It's like, it's almost like you skipped over a lot. And so, so I knew that I was already I was up against that. Then also I was already announced as the Bachelor before Michelle's season was aired. So how do you show Michelle's season with, and then incorporate me into her season without having me outshine her? So as people started watching her season, it's like, we know this guy's the Bachelor. Like, we already know. So now you're playing this game of like, well, we don't want, a white man to overshadow, a black Bachelorette. I mean, I think that was another dynamic where it's like, we got to show him, but we can't like make this his season. It's still her season. Right. So I think, this is just my thoughts, but I think the producers were kind of like, how do we show him without like making this, like making this just nasty and just feel wrong and like we're like overshadowing. So they were trying to like show me without showing too much of me. But then like people weren't a fan of me. And so like I had a promo that I did that was like, I thought super great. It was basically about this, just this guy from Missouri that's like, just trying to find love. And like they pulled the promo, they pulled my appearances, and it's like, so now no one, like all these the moments where I can be potentially put in the spotlight so people can get to know me, all of it was being pulled. And it's like, no one's going to know who this guy is. And then all of a sudden it's like, here's your Bachelor, take him or leave him. And everyone was like, screw this guy. We didn't want him. We wanted, Rodney, we wanted Brandon, we want Olu, everybody besides this guy, and so, but it's like, no, too bad. You already got this guy. So everyone's on Twitter, not, making all these malicious comments in the shows like, hey, like, let's just feed into this a little bit and have fun with it. And are you cool with reading these comments? And I was like, yeah, that's fine. I didn't really anticipate the hatred being like, I was like, oh, we're just going to I'm going to laugh with everybody. But then I did the segment, and afterwards, it just kept piling on. I'm like, oh wait, I'm not laughing with them. Like, I'm being laughed at, and at the end of the day, we all know this, the show, plays on extreme emotions. So if people say they don't want lukewarm, because lukewarm doesn't make a spicy season. They want extreme love or extreme hate. And when the show realized that I was going to be hated, they're like, let's just lean into it then. Like, let's just make him hated, because that's going to give people something to root for on the other side. And it was the women. And so I just became a natural villain bachelor. Now, again, I want to say as well, I took actions that weren't favorable on the show. So I'm not trying to dodge any responsibility. I also don't hold any malice towards the show. I think they just at the end of the day, I gave them a show, and they're like, we can't not show this, man. Like, you're not well liked, and you just did all this crazy stuff. Like, we would get fired if we didn't show this.
Yeah.
So it just was a perfect storm, and I just walked into a villain at it. It just was what it was.
Yeah, it was just really weird, like you said, how it became about, because when Michelle's season starts airing on October 19th that year, like I said, you were right around the time, Bachelor starts filming end of September. I think you were about a month into filming. So you weren't even watching yourself on Michelle's season, because you were off filming your season. You were off in Croatia. So you had no idea what the sentiment was. And we as viewers, like you said, we knew, okay, this guy Clayton, he's going to be a star on Michelle's season. He's going to be a guy that we're all going to love. And we watched the 4 or 5 episodes that you're on, and you're just like, this guy's in the background. This is our Bachelor. Like, they didn't even show you in a positive light. But like you said, there's a reason they couldn't have you outshine their Bachelorette. It would make no sense. It would probably upset a lot of people. So yeah, there just wasn't anything there. I thought we were going to get this. Oh, I can totally see why they picked this guy when we don't even know his story. It's like, oh, It makes sense now. And it didn't, it's just like,
it was a perfect storm. It just was a perfect culmination of there's no way that we can make you look good. I mean, it's just we're really it was a complex matter for them, but again, and so that was just how it played out. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, I get it. I'm not upset. Even though some people, I get why you're upset with me. I understand, I see online people want more diversity. And so it's like, you pick the 6'5" white dude. Where's the diversity? I was like, I get it. You're all, but you're attacking me for accepting this role. As I took it away from them, I'm like, why would I not accept this position? It's a once in a lifetime opportunity, And so I understood why people were upset, but I'm like, I'm not taking this away from anybody. I just took the opportunity because it was presented. So yeah, it just is what it was. And I don't really I get it. I mean, I understood. But even though I understood it made it really hard still to swallow all that, anger and aggression towards me.
And you did an interview, I think last week, where I heard you, this has made the rounds on Instagram. It was just, I guess this is the clip that I saw. I'm just going through my search on Instagram, where you talked about the fact that before The Bachelor started filming, or maybe in the very beginning, you told producers or they asked you, do you think you could fall in love with multiple women? You're like, absolutely not. That's not going to happen. And then I think you said you were in an elevator in Croatia, and you just started laughing out loud to yourself, and producers are looking at you like, what are you laughing at? And you're just like, I've fallen in love with more than one woman. And that ended up being obviously this rose ceremony from hell, because you've got Gabby, you've got Rachel. Susie at that point, isn't at the rose ceremony. We don't even I can't even remember what was even going on with her. I think that's because you had told Susie, you might have to refresh my memory on this. You had told Susie about Gabby and Rachel, and then she basically said, I'm done. I want out.
Yeah, we had it would have been the overnight. So it was the night portion of the date after we had our one-on-one. And I said, she basically brought up to me, if you've been intimate or expressed feelings of love to the other women, I can't move forward. So then, that unfolded, and then it ended with, me becoming upset. I'm like, all right, we're done. She gets into the SUV, she drives away. And then the next day I'm like, I have to tell these women. And, because she left because she had a problem with it. So I need to now inform, Gabby and Rachel, because they likely are going to have a problem with it. And I thought that everyone was going to be okay, because I figured everyone knew that the fantasy suites, these things happen. So I made the assumption we were all on the same page. But then when Susie showed me we weren't, I'm like, well, then maybe I made an incorrect assumption. Now I need to go tell these women. And so that's where the rose ceremony, how it came about.
And in the moment, again, did you think that this was going to be the thing? Like, obviously they made it into, they labeled it the rose ceremony from hell. It was one of the more awkward rose ceremonies we've ever watched in the history of the show. In the moment when you're standing there in, I think that was Croatia, right? Yeah.
No,
Was
wait, yeah, no, wait. Why am I blanking on this? This is Iceland, Reykjavik.
Iceland. Okay, that's right. Overnights were in Iceland. This is happening. Did you think, again, in the moment, it was as bad as it ended up playing out on television?
Oh yeah, I mean, I mean, they're creative for giving it that title, but I knew it was bad. I mean, you could see it on my face. I mean, I was so worn out. That entire night, I didn't sleep the night before. I was just, I was exhausted. So you saw it on my face. I mean, it was just, it looked like I had aged 5-6 years, because I knew, I'm like, there is no way for me to divulge this where they're going to go, where they're not going to be upset. I mean, I knew they weren't going to take it and go, hey, it's all good. No worries. Like, appreciate you letting us know. I knew that it was going to be bad, but I was the one that, you know, again, some people were like, were you prompted to do that? I was like, no, I really, like, I thought that was the best thing to do. You know, I take full accountability for that. Like, why would you do that? I'm like, because I thought, if, like, I can't just move forward and the next day and people, they'll go, what happened to Susie? Oh, I sent her home. I'm like, that's not what happened. You know, I need to let these women know, because they're going to, if I don't tell them now, they're going to see it 4 months later, you know. And also, like, why would I move forward with these other two women and then act like nothing happened? Like, they're going to ask questions. What happened? So I was like, I need to tell them right now, because if I'm going to move forward with them, they need to be okay with this. You know, this is like, there's no way around this. I need to tell them. Like, and so that night when I showed up, I'm like, I had a very, very real, like, belief that that was going to be the end of the show that night. I really felt like both of them were going to say, I can't do this. And they were going to walk out. And I'm like, that's it. That's the end of the show. I think the producers thought that too. They were like, are you sure you want to do this? Like, they were not encouraging me to do it. They're like, are you certain? I was like, yes, I have to do this. And I think they were also like, yeah, this is probably going to be it. I mean, why would these women stay? So we were all walking into it like, it's what else? What are you going to do? Like, I don't want to do this, but, like, I owe it to these women to be transparent and honest. So I thought that was the right thing.
And I think the biggest thing, I guess, that the audience had the issue with was not necessarily the intimacy part of the overnight dates, because I think we all know there have been numerous seasons where the lead has been intimate with more than one person. Yeah. It was the expressing your love to 3 different women, or 2, whatever it was. Right. And I think that was the thing. So, I mean, I don't know, looking back on it, what made you, did you feel like that's something you felt you needed to tell them? Was it something that was ingrained in your head? Like, I think that's the biggest question everybody has is, fine, the intimacy, but why did you tell them how bad how you felt about them and that you were in love with them?
Yeah. So what happened was I was holding back. So all 3 of these women at this point told me that they were falling in love with me. And they told me, you know, weeks prior to the rose ceremony from hell. And so now I'm like, well, I don't want to tell, like, I can't fall in love with multiple people. I said that to the producer. So I'm like, I really like these women. Like, do you love them? I'm like, I don't know. I feel like I can't fall in love with multiple people. It's going to be a train wreck. Like, and so I was fighting, holding back. Well, then I had the 3 of them, you know, approach me at different times and said, you know, I've told you the way I feel. You haven't reciprocated it. So I'm starting to close off, because I feel like if it were me that you loved, you would reciprocate, but you haven't told me anything. And it's been like a week and a half. So I'm starting to close back off. So I get told this by all 3 of them, or maybe not all 3, but I think we're having 2 of 3. And I'm like, well, this is not what I want. Like, I really do have love for all 3 of them. Like, well, at the time I was like grappling. I'm like, I go back to my room and I'm like, these women are closing off. Like, I don't want to tell them all 3 I love them, because, like, that's going to be a mess. But I do care about them. I do really like them. Like, do I love them? Like, I guess I do for different reasons. And I'm like, but no, I can't. So I'm like going back and forth. I'm torn. And I'm like, Clayton, you're going to shoot yourself in the foot. Like, if you don't tell these women how you feel, they're all leaving. They're all going to close off, and you're going to end up with nobody. And I finally was like, you're in an environment where like it's a polyamorous environment. Everyone knows how this goes. You have the ability to tell them and fall in love with multiple people, and it's okay because this isn't the real world. So that's when it hit me in the elevator, and I started laughing. I'm like, I'm so screwed. And they're like, why? I was like, because I just realized I fall in love with, like, it's not that I realized at that point that I fell in love with 3 women. It's that I finally was willing to allow myself to fall in love with them. And I was like, I need to tell them now because I don't want them to close off. And so I was like excited, and I'm like, I got to go tell them all, because I do love them for different things, each of them for different things. So yeah, that was what it came down to. It was either you tell them how you feel, or you keep fighting and resisting and not telling them, and then they may end up all closing off, and you're going to end up alone. Like, that was my fear.
So I think one of the things that was interesting about it was, you tell Susie. Susie says, if you were intimate, I can't move forward with you. Fine. She gets in a SUV. The rose ceremony from hell happens. Both Rachel and Gabby, go off on you. But then Susie is still there and around, and you're like, first off, did you know she was still there? Or I can't remember how that went about. Once Gabby and Rachel were just like, we're done. And then, but yet the last we saw of you and Susie was her getting into a car. Did you assume that she had left? How did that all come about? And I guess going forward, we all know now, we know the story that once you left Iceland, you on the TV show, you were single, but days after that, you and Susie got in touch and ended up, working things out. So my question was, I guess, how did Susie end up getting over it? Because her whole point was, hey, if you were intimate with them, I can't be with you. But then when you left Iceland, she could. Was that a sticking point in the relationship that was always going to come up? Did it play a role? Or once you guys had the talk after Iceland and you guys, cameras were off, you could actually talk like real people, did it become less of an issue?
I think that night was just so emotionally charged that there was nothing, it got to a place where there was nothing constructive that was going to come out of it. And again, like, people like just have to realize that was a 4.5-hour conversation. Everyone it looked like on camera that it was 20 minutes. No, it was 4.5 hours. And it was really actually a really positive conversation for the first, 3.5. And then, as we began to realize that there was no progressing forward, I started getting my head and started to question, her. And I was like, I don't know if, I really understand, like, this feels like a setup. So I started to question, and that just went downhill. And there's just certain things I can't talk about. So, so I just, unfortunately, as much as, I can't talk about certain things. So that then I think whenever things settled, it was like, I guess in her mind, she was like, I am willing to at least have a conversation with him. And I, was like, hey, I just want to apologize. So I know that she's not going to take me back. I mean, at the end, when she came back, for the final rose, there was this big, dramatic, is she going to show up or not? I knew she was going to show up. I knew she was going to show up. The producers were like, do you think she's going to show up? I was like, yeah. Not even questioning that she will. And they said, well, how? I said, because it's in her character. I said, but she's not going to accept the rose. I said, I know that. So I knew in my heart, I'm like, she's going to show up and she's going to let me down, but she's going to show up because it's in her character to do so, but she's not walking out of here with me. So that's why, I knew it was coming. And when she showed up and then she was like, I can't leave with you. I'm like, I know. So I was already, that's why I was just like, I knew this. And so she goes on her way, and I just was like, that's it. Like, I stood out in the rain. It's kind of like a very movie-esque ending. It was weird. It was like, I'm standing in the rain downpouring, the freaking producers are having, they're just, oh, get the angles. This is incredible. It's like there's a fire pit behind me. It's downpouring. It's like the perfect ending.
Yeah.
And I'm just standing there, and I couldn't believe it. I'm like, is my life even real? Like, how did this happen? Like, I legitimately was found a way to become the first Bachelor that ended up being alone, that nobody wanted to be with. And I was, again, at the time, I was a people pleaser. I didn't feel good enough. I said that on Michelle's season. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, just, there you go. You're not good enough. You had 30 women and not a single one of them. You ended up with none of them at the end. So I'm just standing there for like 30 minutes. And I'm like, I cannot believe that this is my reality. Like, this is proof that you're not good enough. So it was a tough moment. Yeah, it was just a lot. It was not what I anticipated, not what my family anticipated. And yeah, the whole last week was a whirlwind. I was just, honestly, just moment to moment. I couldn't even grasp what was happening.
And then after it ended, we know that you guys spoke after Iceland. I can't remember who said it. Who reached out to who? Did you reach out to her to be like, hey, just want to apologize for everything? And then it got into deeper conversations. And like I said, you guys were able to talk off camera and actually talk like normal people. Or did she reach out to you? Which one was it?
Yeah, I mean, I believe everything happens for a reason, and I think there's just some things I can't explain in life. But I happened to get my phone back, and so I was on the plane, and I landed, in St. Louis, and I like go on social media because I hadn't been on social media in months, and so I'm like, I go on my DMs, and it's just like thousands of messages. And I just honestly, I mean, again, I thought it was absolutely just wild, but I'm scrolling through and I'm like, at this point, I'm just scrolling. I'm like, how many freaking messages?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I see this red blur, and red was my favorite color. So I see this red blur and I stop. I don't, just because I'm like scrolling and I'm like, oh, red. My eyes like go to red, and it says Susie Evans. And I'm like, no, this has got to be like a fake burner account or something. So I click on the phone, the message, and it's like, hey, like, can we talk? Like, I have a lot that I need to talk to you about. So like I click on the page, and I think she left it public, probably because she was like, he's probably going to question if this is real. So I click through her photos. I'm like, holy, this is actually her. So then I message her. I'm like, let's talk like when I land, or like when I get home. And so we did. So we FaceTimed that night and had a 3-hour conversation. And yeah, that was just like, okay. Like, so at the end of the conversation, I said, hey, I'm like, can I call you again? You know, because I didn't know like what that was. I was like, this is 3 hours and we're done talking? And I was like, can I call you again? She's like, yeah, I would like that. So we just like talked the next day, and then kept talking. And then it was like, hey, can we maybe just try to give this a chance? And so we did. And, you know, that's kind of where it kicked back up.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was obviously that no season had really ever ended like that, but it was while the show, I know that this is where Susie played a big role in your life, because while the show was airing, you know, you getting kicked in the nuts by, you know, social media and the public and all that. And I know that's where your mental health journey wasn't good when the show was airing. And you got to a point now, I know, like you said, Susie helped you out with it, but can you explain to the public exactly what you were going through when this was airing? And was it just a loss of, I don't know, self-worth, or just like, this is just awful for me, nobody likes me, nobody, and
Yeah.
the Bachelor is supposed to be beloved for the most part, you know, and nobody's liking me and all this, like, where did it get for you with that?
Yeah. You know, what's wild is, I thought that everyone hated me. Like, I legitimately thought that I was the most hated Bachelor ever. Now, granted, when the people bring up the discussion online, I do see it's like my name's somewhere in the mix. But
Yeah.
I remember I remembered it whenever I first was announced. I thought that every message on the puppy photo of me was like, who is this guy? We don't like him. He sucks. He's ugly. He has man boobs. He has an underbite. I mean, I heard all these. He's stupid. I heard all these things, and I felt like I would like the entire world hated me. What I thought was really fascinating was like probably 6 months ago, I went back because I was trying to take screenshots of messages because I was going to go give a speech, and I was going to talk about, you know, all the negativity that I faced online. And I'm like scrolling through the post, and I can't find the negative messages. And I'm like, did ABC come on and scrub this photo? Like, where are they? And then it was like every 10 messages there was a negative message. And I'm like, no, they definitely deleted comments or something. So I keep scrolling, and I'm like, this isn't that bad. And so what I found out was probably every negative comment held the weight of like 30 to 40 positive comments, because I was a people pleaser. And so every time I saw a negative comment, I dwelled on that comment. When I saw a positive comment, I just scroll past. He's a great guy. Yeah, okay. Thank you. Scroll, 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 scroll. When it was a negative comment, I got fixated on it, and I would look at it and stare at it for, you know, 10 times the amount that I would for a positive comment. So where I'm going with this is that, yeah, I wasn't a well-liked Bachelor, but I wasn't as hated as what I really thought I was in my own mind. I thought that I was like, I mean, I couldn't walk the streets without people throwing drinks at me and spitting on me. And I mean, I literally thought that I was the worst, you know, the most hated individual, you know, ever. I mean, that, you know, transcended multiple reality TV shows. That's where my mind went. And so I went into a really dark space. And there was a photo that I released where it was the day before the after the final rose. It was like episode 2 was when I was revealed in person, but episode 1 I wasn't present. Well, I was watching it live with everybody else in this safe house in LA with Susie, and there was a point where, I mean, everyone was, they're ripping into me on. I was reading the comments on Twitter. I mean, there was like they had the panel of people, and they're like, he's not smart for doing this. Like, he's not a intelligent person. And I just got overwhelmed, and I got up and I went and walked over to the window, and I stood there for like 30 minutes, and I just couldn't watch the episode anymore. I just stood out there and I looked out the window, and I'm like, why me? Like, why, like, what was the point of even going through this? Like, why did I have to be chosen? Like, this was the worst thing that ever happened to me, and wouldn't this be easier if like I just ended it all? Like, I don't even want to like go like live another day. Like, this is just too much. Like, I just wanted people to like me. Like, I just wanted to be beloved for once in my life. I've always felt like I've been in the shadows. I've always felt like I've been trying to prove to people I'm good enough. And even though I became an NFL athlete briefly, even though I ended up becoming the Bachelor, like all these things that should have amounted to something, I ended up finding a way to be hated. And so I just felt like, I'm like, there's nothing you can do in this lifetime, Clayton, to be loved. That's how I felt, because I was placing so much importance on external validation. I was placing so much importance upon accolades and accomplishments. And so I thought, what more can you do, man? You became the Bachelor, and you still are hated. Like, every Bachelor is supposed to be beloved, but not you. You found a way to be the one that was hated. So it just destroyed me. And I had no self-worth. And so imagine being, in a relationship with somebody that has no confidence and no self-love. How do you expect them to give any type of love to your partner when they can't even love themselves? So I for that matter, that was something that I could not provide to Susie. She poured in everything that she could at points, and I couldn't give her anything back. And don't forget that, like, Susie also was not really liked by a certain audience, because it became like Camp Susie versus Camp Clayton. Like, the way the ending was like, who was in the wrong? And some people took my side and other people took her side. And so she was getting torn to shreds in her DMs too. I mean, like, I saw that some of her, at one point, she was getting worse messages than I was. People were telling her like she's to take her life. Like, she was getting all the same messages that I was getting. They were like, what show did you think you went on? Like, girl, get a grip. Like, are you stupid? Like, I mean, she was getting blasted too. I saw the messages. And yet she was pouring everything into me, and I couldn't give her anything back, because I'm like, I'm drained. I have nothing. Like, I don't even love myself. And I see you getting these messages, but I'm still getting them too. Like, so it just was a really, really tough relationship. I mean, I think there was love there on both fronts. I know there was love there on both fronts, but like, we were just worn down. I mean, wiped out. I mean, both of us, we were sleeping and laying in bed until 9-10 o'clock, because we didn't want to get up and start going out and having to live our life, because we had no energy. It was like, every day we woke up, we felt drained, because it was like, once we go on social media, once we start like living our life and we open up our phones, it's just going to be a wave of negativity. And that's what it was. And so it was really hard.
Did you guys ever do, I know, obviously, I don't know at what point your mental health journey started with seeing a therapist.
Right.
Did you guys ever do couples therapy, or was it just you did it separately?
No, yeah, I was doing individual therapy, and then we were doing couples therapy.
Okay, so you did do couples,
and we were making progress, but the problem is like, it's just like, we would make progress in the couples therapy, but then we would go online, and it was just like thousands of comments, DMs, nonstop. I mean, Bachelor Nation is a very rabid audience, like, they'll either be really against you or really for you, but they're extreme one way or the other. And, we would go into these couple therapy sessions, and we would kind of start to understand each other's point of views. But then we'd go on social media, and we'd have people in our DM saying like, why are you still with her? Or why are you with him? Like, he was 100% in the wrong, or she was 100% in the wrong. And so everything that we were building and fixing in therapy just kept getting, ripped to shreds the second we went back online, because people were just nonstop commenting. Like, we couldn't get away from it. We could have shut off social media. I mean, like, again, listen, like,
yeah,
we could have shut off social media, but I'm just going to be honest with you. Like, I've never made easier money in my life. Like doing the whole influencer thing. I mean, you go somewhere, you get paid $10,000 and you travel for free. Like, and I wasn't even like a big time. Like there's previous people that I heard were making $40,000 a post.
Yeah.
Where are you ever going to make $40,000 on one post and then travel for free on top of that? I mean, we weren't paying for trips anywhere. And so it's like a really hard thing to just say, well, get off social media. I would be a bad business person. Like I also, why would you not take advantage of that? If like, hey, come to New York and we're going to pay you $15,000 and on top of a free travel trip, we're going to pay for your flights. We're going to pay for your lodging, pay for the events you go to. I mean, it was like fantasy land. I've never made easier money in my life. And so it was so hard to like, you're like, well, we would be fools to not continue to engage on social media, because as long as we engage on social media, the opportunities keep coming. But if you cut it off, then go back to your regular job. And I'm just saying, like, again, like for putting in, like social media is tough in its own ways, and to have to create and have to face, all this criticism, you're subjecting yourself to a lot. But I mean, gosh, I've never made easier money in my life. It's like, I couldn't justify it. Yeah, I was like, I need to get off social media, but I'm like, but Clayton, you're making more money than you've ever made in your life, man. Like it's the easiest thing you've ever done. Like you'd be stupid. Like you could make money to set you up for a lifetime. So it was like this hard dynamic. And then
yeah. I think, a lot of people, like you said, go through that. And it is this weird thing because there are negativity out there. Nobody is universally liked. We know that. No matter, even if you take, the most popular people in Bachelor Nation, they still have people that are just like, yeah, I don't like them, and will comment about anything about them. So once the relationship ended with Susie, did you stay in therapy? Are you still in therapy today?
No, I didn't stay in therapy because I am just an open book, and I feel like I get therapy sessions from people every day in my daily life. I found out that therapy is guided mindfulness. Is the way that I thought I was going to go into therapy, and what I realized is what I thought therapy was going to be was like coaching. So having a life coach. I expected them to say, okay, tell me all your things. And then after I hear you out, I'm going to give you, bits of advice, and here's where you should go. But then I told my therapist one day, I said, when are you going to tell me what to do? Like, I've been talking, for the last 3 sessions. When are you going to like actually like give me some advice? She's like, I'm not. I said, what do you mean? Then why am I here? She's like, I'm going to keep asking you questions until you uncover the solutions yourself. I'm like, well, how am I going to, like, I don't even think I know what I'm going to uncover. She's like, you will. Like, I just have to make, my job is to ask the right questions, and eventually it'll click. And she was right. One day it just like clicked, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like the only way that I'm going to make changes is when I finally decide to make the changes, but I have to get to that place myself. I just need someone to help get me there. And so that's what therapy did. Well, then when I got out of therapy, I just kept having these conversations, and I kept realizing, I'm like, this feels just like therapy. I'd sit down with somebody and they'd be like, well, like, why do you think you did that? And I was so fascinated by mindfulness and just, self-improvement and self-actualization that I was just initiating these conversations. I still do. And I have these conversations on a daily basis. So I really feel like I'm still in therapy because I have people asking me these questions, and I ask them back, and I learn more. And so I feel that I'm very, very at ease, and I feel that I'm growing so much because I'm now just having these conversations that I was having behind closed doors in therapy. I'm now having them just on a daily basis.
So I can't remember how long after the breakup it happened, and when obviously we know when the Laura thing started, but what made you, I mean, I know one of the biggest things on your social media is the fact that you just decided, I want to take up hip hop dancing. And it was this long journey where you basically said to yourself, like, this is something I've always wanted to do. And maybe you were scared to do it because you were afraid of being judged by the public. But then you just said F it at one point and just said, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to put it, not only am I going to take hip hop dancing classes, I'm going to show people how I'm progressing, how I'm doing, and whatnot. What made you get into that? And was that a moment of like, boom, it's working for me, I don't need external validation here?
Yeah. So again, because of my whole journey, when I got to that lowest of lows where I'm like, nobody likes you for what you've built. Because I built a facade. I mean, the person that I built up was like, maybe if I have bigger muscles, maybe if I'm the superstar athlete, maybe if I look, better, I dress better, maybe if I create this human being that is impressive, I'll finally be accepted. Well, it wasn't who I really wanted to be. And so it was kind of, it was a facade. And so whenever I got to this low point where I'm like, you built this person up and people still hate you. So now that you're basically down, kicked into the corner, you have two options: either build back up the person that you were and try again, or build the real version of you this time around. Because like, to me, I was like, hey, you're already hated by everybody. At least it feels that way. So how about you build back the real version of you this time and see if people accept that version of you? And so I said, forget it. Like, I'm not living my life for anybody else anymore. I'm going to start just doing me. And so I started to make these changes, and I'm like, I have this creative being in me. Like, I'm a creator. I am, but I, was an executor. I'm like, there's creators and executors. There's people that need creators to give them tasks and then they go execute them. And then there's people that are just like, I mean, yeah, you have those two kinds of people. I put myself in the execution category where I'm like, you give me something and I'll go do it for you. But then I realized, I'm like, there's this creative thirst in me where I'm like, I actually like have these juices that I want to let out. Like, I want to do these things, but I'm not doing them because I'm fearful of judgment. And so, I mean, there's plenty of times in my life where I tried to dance in the clubs, and I'll never forget, there was a time where I was out with I think it was when I was out with Brandon and Rodney, and I was in LA and I was dancing in this club, and I saw this girl and she looked at me and she was like, gave me this look, and I just stopped dancing. And I was like, I'm like, I can't, like, I want to dance, but like, I suck. And so I'm like, I can't dance. Like, I'm so embarrassed. And this girl was looking at me like, oh, stop, and so those moments would burn into my head. Well, then when I finally just had this effort moment where I'm like, I don't care how stupid I look. Like, I want to dance. I've always wanted to, so I'm going to go do it. So I went into the first class and I was super nervous, but once I got through the first class, I'm like, that wasn't actually that bad. Like the dancers are a really accepting group of people. Like, that was actually really fun. Like, I felt supported. So I took the private classes, and then one day I was so happy because like I learned my first dance, and I'm like, I'm just so pumped. And so I was like on a cloud nine. I'm like, I'm doing it. And I was like, I'm gonna post it online. And I was so happy to do that little step. It was like this to Freak Leak, the song. And I was just like, I thought I was the man. I'm like, look, I'm vibing, I'm moving, like, and it was such a simple dance move, but I was so happy to like finally be doing it. And I wanted to show everybody. And I thought it was like super smooth. And so I was proud of it. I posted out there and everyone's like, oh, this is cool. And I'm like, okay. So I was getting a little external validation for sure by posting that. But I'm like, oh, I'm doing what I love. And like, people are accepting me for it. Then I kept posting some videos, and some of the videos were like, not great at all. And I look at them now and I'm like, oh, why did I post that? Like, that's super stiff. And like some of them are, I get it. Where people like, they're cringy. I'm like, yeah, that wasn't that good of a video. But in the moment, I was so happy about it that I posted it. It wasn't cringy to me. I was like, no, I'm just like super excited to like share this with you guys. But then I started seeing people, like, I started getting DMs and people like, you know what, you posting this and just being you, like, even though you're getting hit with criticism, it's pushing me to want to step out of my comfort zone. And so I had people saying like, hey, I just took a hip hop class because of you, and I'm super excited. Like, I've went to like 4 sessions now. Thank you so much for like stepping out of your comfort zone and showing me I could do the same. I had people saying like, hey, I took a knitting class. I signed up for a pottery class because like I'm watching you chase your passions and seeing your excitement. So now I'm doing it. And that just fueled me. And then I was like, at this point, it's bigger than me. Like, I'm doing the thing that I love, but now like it's helping other people. So like, fine, I'll just post my dancing journey. Why not? Like, just to give people some hope that like, and show them like, hey, you don't have to be a pro. Like, look at me. I posted my last video. I was like, hey, if my stiff ass can post these videos, like, y'all can go do whatever it is that's uncomfortable. So I kind of saw it as like, look what you're able to do. You're impacting people, but you're also just being you. And then I started attracting like-minded individuals. And so now the people I have around me are like people I actually want to be around. And it's awesome. It's like I have an authentic group of people for the first time in my life that like I actually want to be around.
Well, I think one of the videos you posted recently was hey, here's a clip from one of the first days I learned how to do this dance to here I am a year later. I think it was like, it was a year video of doing the same dance. And you're just like, you do look back at that first one. And, and as I watch it, and I think that's the biggest thing when you first dance, because you're not a dancer, it looked stiff. It just looked like, okay, he's got the moves, but it just looks like he's just counting in his head. Okay, I got to do this. I got to do this with my foot. I got to do this with my arm. And now a year later, you're doing the same exact move, but it looks a lot more fluid. You can
I'm
just
still
tell.
stiff. I mean, like I'm still stiff. Again, like I see what people see. I'm not like, I don't have this altered sense of, perception. I'm like, I see the stiffness. I mean, I get it, but I am what I am. I'm like, I'm a big guy and I'm stiff and I never really stretched, so like I have I'm just bulky. And so like, my body doesn't flow that way. But the thing is I'm like, if you look at the before and after videos, you can see, I posted one recently that shows, every month, like I was a video that I took from each month in the last year. You can see I became a different person. My style changed. The clothes I was wearing, I had earrings, my hairstyle changed, because what happened is the old me died on this journey in the last year. And the new me, the authentic me, the creative me has come out and been like, this is the real me. Like, I'm doing whatever the hell I want now. So I watched that video and I was like, this is super cool. Like, externally, you can see the change, but internally it's even greater. And I just was, I thought that was really cool. And I like that. And I like that social media actually can be a positive place where you can inspire people. And so now I'm like, I get to post something I love, and it just happens to like inspire people. That's a pretty cool spot to be in.
Yeah. And that's great to hear. Like you said, like internally it's changed you even more than it has changed externally. So, as we kind of wrap this up, where do you go from here? Do you try and get back into speaking again, doing speaking engagements? Is that on the docket? Obviously you're still in real estate. I believe you're still doing that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So what's next? I mean, what I'm really excited about is I'll be filming my first 4 episodes of my men's mental health podcast here soon. So I wanted to get back into mental health. And so I think that right now there's a major stigma with men and being vulnerable. And so I'm like, okay, like this is where I can make my difference in this world. I can start having men be vulnerable, open up, and hopefully get other men as they watch, these podcasts or listen to them to also do the same, because there's strength and vulnerability. So that's the avenue I'm going back to right now for mental health. I mean, I'd also like to go back to speaking around the country. It just hasn't happened yet, but right now, immediately, the podcast will be my avenue to be able to continue to, or to get back into like the mental health realm. I'm still going to dance. I mean, I told my instructor, I was like, I mean, I'm sticking around for at least a few more years. I was like, I have no reason to stop. Like, I'm still progressing, I mean, it's not at a pay, I'm progressing. So I was like, progress is progress. And then I still do real estate, and I still do solar sales. And solar sales is relatively new, but I have the things that I do, and I do my Airbnb. I have like a lot, but it's manageable and I enjoy it. And I have everything I need. So yeah, like I'm just happy. I'm like, I got everything I need, and my life is entertaining, exciting. And, if I get to do what I love, that's pretty sweet.
What's the name of the mental health podcast, and when is it officially coming out? And
yeah, so it's going to be called, it is called Beyond the Cover. So the premise of it is, again, like, like everyone sees, face value, the front page of a book, but I want to go beyond the cover with people. I want to be able to peel, flip the pages and have people that, men that I'm going to bring on that are, might be perceived as having it all figured out. They're, high profile individuals in their respective lines of business, but I want them to show like, hey, here's adversity I went through, here's insecurities I've dealt with. I still bleed the same blood as everybody else. So super excited about that. Beyond the Cover just felt like a really great title. And it'll likely, first episode I'll just say it'll come out within the next month. I don't know. We're going to do our first 4 episodes film here in the next week. And then it's all new to me. So as far as how quickly my team will turn it around, it'll safely, I can say the next month it'll be out.
Okay, cool. And obviously we'll all be looking for that. And, one final thing, and I don't even know if you can say this or maybe even give us a hint. You had referenced in a recent interview in regards to alluding to having something in your back pocket, like something up your sleeve that dealing with, I'm assuming this is dealing with, the Laura Owens case. I mean, maybe you can reveal it now. If not, fine. Can you give us a hint to what this is? Or
I feel like
what can you say about it?
I feel like that got really blown up. I've seen that a few times. Yeah, I already, so it got really blown up out of proportion where everyone thought that I had some like really, I'll put it this way. I've already done what I said that I was going to do, that I had up my sleeve. I've already done it. And it served its purpose, and it actually worked just like I thought. But it wasn't like, I think everyone thought that I had some like information that I was withholding that I was just going to launch. I'm not, I won't say it, because who's going to watch, and then she's going to think, she's going to take it a certain way and think that it was kind of it's anticlimactic. I mean, it served its purpose, what I did. I was withholding doing something, and then I finally did it, and it grabbed the attention of people, and it took and gained the traction that I needed it to. And I was withholding doing it up until that point. I feel like I can't say, because it's going to be, I think it could be taken in a certain way where I can't give her anything that at this point she's lost. And if I give her anything, she'll be like, well, you use this in this manner. I'll just say that I've already done it. And it was definitely like, I don't have some secret. It wasn't as big as what people thought it was. I guess in that moment, like I thought it was big. And I guess it was, but I'm not really doing a great job right now. Obviously it's like, what is it? I really, it's one of these things where like, I decided to say something and reveal something on my own that I hadn't done prior, that I wasn't willing to say prior. And I finally said it, and it caught fire, and now it's all out there and there's no hiding. I'll just say that.
Okay. So it's already internally, it's already been done. It's not
out.
Been done publicly that we know of. It's not a
no, it has. Yeah, no, it has. It's not as listen, I saw that and I was like, all right, Clayton, you probably got a little too like, I think I had to go back to that moment. I think I said that. Honestly,
I can't even remember what podcast you said it on.
Yeah, I think I honestly said that in a little way, just because I know that she was going to watch it, and I was like, I just want to say this just to like rile you up. Like, I'm just going to say this because I want you to know, like, I have plenty more I can do, and if you're going to keep going, like, I'm going to kind of poke a little bit. I think I think that was more so a message to her directly, where I'm like, oh, I got more in the tank. Like, if you want to play this game, let's go. Let's fight fire with fire.
Yeah.
So I think that was more of a statement towards her.
Well, I mean, it's been great talking to you finally. Since the time we talked months ago, over a year ago on the phone, and then obviously I saw you in Arizona. But great to finally have you on the podcast, go over everything, just kind of relive. And I think your message and what you have gone through over the last 13 months, I don't think anybody in Bachelor Nation can say that they have dealt with what you have dealt with, either show related or non-show related. There have been bachelors that have dealt with, being on the cover of People magazine. Jason Mesnick took a lot of heat for dumping Melissa and going with Molly, but now he's married with a kid with her. It's just like, it passes. But yours passed. And then this whole thing with Laura Owens came up. So, man, you're a good guy. I really appreciate you for coming on. This has been a long time coming. I hope a lot of people learned a little bit more about Clayton Echard, the person, today, rather than just Clayton Echard, the guy who was the Bachelor. Again, I can't thank you enough for coming on. I really appreciate it, man. And we'll obviously be in touch.
Yes, sir, Steve. I appreciate you, man, for everything you've done as well. I know you put yourself in the line of fire with a few other individuals when you didn't have to, and so I appreciate it. And it's funny because I knew about you the second I became the Bachelor. Everyone's like, "Oh, Reality Steve, he's going to try to pull stuff out of you." I don't know if I told you this. My mom loves you. Like, she was like your biggest fan. She's like, and whenever you first reached out, she's like, Reality Steve, because like you've placed yourself up there where like if you know Bachelor, Reality Steve. So it was funny because she was always excited. And then I think you had reached out to her at one point, and she was like, Reality Steve reached out to me, and I was like, Mom, don't say anything. I was like, I'm under contract. Like, he's doing his job, but like, do not. So I was like, I will get in trouble, because I had to be careful telling my mom stuff, because she wasn't used to everyone like wanting to talk to her about things. But no, it's just funny because like you said, long time coming, but really grateful, man. You're a good dude, and I think a lot of people times, think they make their own inferences. They think they know you. They think it's like they see you as the guy, the gossip guy, reality guy for the Bachelor, but it's like and I've had face-to-face conversations, phone conversations, and you're a genuine guy that just wants to, it's just like, this is what I do for work. But, what I do for work isn't who I, am at my core. And that's what I also would agree with on my own. It's like, I'm like, just because I did do this doesn't mean who I am at my core. So I see that in you, man. Really appreciate you for who you are, and really appreciate this podcast. You asked a lot of good questions. I think people will obviously see me in a little bit of a different light. So I appreciate you giving me that platform to do so.
Yeah, no problem. I think, now that I'm thinking back to it, I think the last time I reached out to your mom was when the pictures of you filming in Missouri for your intro video, when I didn't know much about you. And
you're like,
to hear rumors.
You confirm this is Clayton.
I sent a picture of that to her, and I said, can you confirm this is your son? never heard back. And I was like,
I know,
oh,
because
okay.
she read it. She read it. She
Oh
goes,
yeah.
she goes, Clayton, reality Steve. She's like,
Yeah.
he just like, he reached out to me and she was so excited. I was like, what'd he say? She's like, she's asking if this is you. I was like, do not answer that, Mom. Do
Which
not.
obviously I should have known it was you. It was obvious. I mean, the pictures were very clear of you shooting that thing in
Yeah, but you were
Missouri.
looking for confirmation because you obviously your job is, you know, like you can release spoilers and stuff. And so you were doing your due diligence to be like, I gotta, like, before I release this, let me make sure. And it was funny because I mean, again, there's no harm, no foul. I'm like, he's doing his job, and I'm like, Mom, do not answer that.
Yeah, no, that's funny. And you know what? Remember your season? I did not know the ending to your season for the longest time. I had a lot of spoilers to your season of terms of dates and when stuff happened and who went on what dates, but I didn't know the whole Susie ending. I think until the weekend. I think the weekend before the finale aired is when I finally found out that, oh, you know, there is, they don't leave together, but I didn't know what your situation was. Currently at that time, it was,
we kept it under wraps. I mean, we kept it under wraps, and it kind of at one point became a game. It was almost like I was posting stuff on my social media where, like, I posted the one photo where I put self-timer mode and I was like standing by the foot of the bed with my shirt off, and she had you could see her leg, but like, it looked like it could be a leg. And then I did another one where like I was looking back, and I said, looking back at my past and future. I mean, so her and I were like having fun with it. We were like, I was dropping little Easter eggs, but we made it a game. We're like, can we go the distance without this being spoiled? You know, because it's at that point, it was like just as fun for us to like be secretly dating. So yeah, it was, we were trying our hardest to throw everybody off.
I think the picture of you on the bed was the first time I was like, wait, maybe he is with somebody, because that's a weird picture to take of yourself. It's got to be her in the bed with him.
No, we even like, again, we were like, we had like, I was like, make sure you get your leg in it a little bit, like, but you can't tell it's a leg, but maybe it's a leg. And we were, because again, like, we couldn't go out in public, so we were like stuck in the house all day. So we were like, hey, let's kind of be the show, like the, you know, the gift that keeps giving. Like, let's keep like throwing little Easter eggs out here and just like have fun with it, because we're sitting in a house all day. So we're like, let's just kind of be like, you know, maniacal, or like, let's just be a little fun with it and like play this game.
The other, now that I think about it, the other thing about Susie was, you know, I'm trying to figure out, did he pick Susie? Is Susie with him right now? She posted a lot from Virginia Beach. Like, I was like, she's never away. She's always posting where she is. But now looking back on it, maybe she was doing later grams and posting stuff, making us think that she was in Virginia Beach when she was actually with you, because she was seemingly always like watching from the place that she used to work at. I think it's called Duke's or whatever. I was like, she's posting there on Monday nights while the show was on. And I'm like, what?
She was capturing days in advance, like a whole week worth of content. And then we would go meet up for 4 days, and she would just be posting those, you know, day after day. So she was super, super smart with it. Right. And we were like, it became this cycle. Like, can we trick the fans? Like, let's go ahead and like trick everybody else and play our own little game, you know, like it just became like this fun little thing. And we were dropping clues, and some people were picking up on it. And we were like, sometimes we were too discreet and people weren't. I was like, we have to be a little bit more obvious. And it was just something fun. Like, it felt like a little psychological game where we were just playing it. And she was really, I mean, her family, like some of her family didn't know. I mean, up until like a few weeks in, after she kept leaving Virginia, like she kept it from her brother. And there's one, I know we're wrapping up here, but there was one funny point that cracked you up. I think she already shared this on a podcast. But we were sitting there like in this house together, and he calls. He's like, "What are you doing?" And her brother, and she's like, "I'm just, you know, hanging out at my house." He's like, "Oh, cool." He's like, "I saw a video of Clayton that made its way out or something." He's like, "It's kind of a dork," or he said something along those lines. And like, I'm dying, like I'm laughing in the background, and she's like looking, and she's like, because he's saying this, and he's like, he made some comment, like he wasn't being an asshole, but he made some comment about how it was like a dork or corny or something like that. I can't remember what it was. And I'm just sitting there holding like my breath, because I'm like, he has no idea that I'm sitting here and he's on speaker. And she's like, she's like, I can't tell him. But she's like, you know, oh yeah. And it was just a funny little scenario. And he finally found out, because she was like, I had to withhold it because she was afraid that it was going to leak if like she told her family, because we were like told, you cannot let this get out. Like, you have to keep this quiet. So we were, you know, telling a few people, but yeah, it was just a fun. I don't know.
Which is really ironic, because, you know, look, obviously I'd like to get the spoiler for every season and whatnot, but what's really interesting is it would benefit the final couple if it got out there early and I put it out there and I was able to spoil the final couple. Like, it would only help because it would get people behind you and get people as they're watching the show to be like, oh, this is who ends up together. Let's kind of root for them. It's like, it's not a negative thing. I get why the show doesn't want you to be like, obviously you can't go on a podcast or whatever, but trust me, I wish the final couples understood how much better it would help them if it was out there of who they chose.
Because you're right, it gives them more time. It gives people more time to or watch the show and be like, I'm rooting for them. You're right. Hey, well, like you said, perfect storm. I said, there's a perfect storm, man. Unfortunately, my ignorance just put me in all the worst possible outcomes where I was like, it's better if we keep this secret to the last second. And I was playing this game to try to keep it secret, and and I did all the things wrong to be liked. So it is, hey, you know what? It is what it is. It's all up there.
You've turned it around. Obviously, things have gotten better. You had to deal with this garbage for the last 13 months, but it seems like we're past that. And, obviously we'll be following your journey. Clayton, again, thanks for coming on, man. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Steve.
You got it. Okay. End recording.